Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about H-1B visas. I know you're all like, why would we talk about that? But come on, let's be honest. Everybody right now is going, what is the deal with these H-1B visas? I have my own opinion on them. I've had my own experience with having struggles getting workers, and we'll get into all of it and I'll tell you exactly how I feel. But I decided I needed someone who was really smart on this and really could talk about it. So we're bringing in Sam Mirejovsky with us. He is a lawyer and radio host out of Nevada, and he is going to dive into this issue with us. Sam, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, Tudor, great to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we are obviously watching people back and forth discuss this. There were these tweets from, I guess it was Vivek Ramaswamy, who was tweeting out about bringing in outside workers. A lot of people have historically felt like we needed to get tech workers with H-1B visas. And now there's an argument that, well, we'd rather just use American workers. Why are we relying on this? So give me like your background on this whole situation.
Well, so, part of my personal story, my parents came to this country, immigrants from Europe. My mother is a scientist, and she came in on an H-1B visa. So part of my story, I have to be transparent about this, is that, I'm here because of this program. Now, that was back in 1977. And I would go on to say my mom, contributed to science in a profound way. I mean, she created a drug called propofol, which is used in every, general anesthesia basically across the country, across the world. So, she's not a slouch, and she's the kind of person that, of course, we want to attract to the country that are bringing, technical skill, know-how, and expertise. So
I would argue that was back at a time when this was not abused. And I say that because I think now it is abused in a way where we have people coming over here. They are coming over here, getting our technology, taking it back. There's just a whole lot of mystery around whether or not we're getting good people to come over here, whether or not we're just taking a group from one country. There's a lot of abuse, I would say, with H-1B visas, because any program that starts out well, if it's not monitored, can be abused.
Well, that's 1,000% correct. And what I'm seeing and I've spent a lot of time poring over the data because it's all publicly available, and it's fascinating. I really get the impression that a lot of employers out there just want to get people to work for less. I mean that's what it is. If you look at prevailing wages in certain areas, they're attracting, let's say a data analyst for $75,000 to $80,000 a year, when they know that they would have to pay a domestic, an American, whatever, resident or citizen, maybe 120, 130 for the same job. And that's not what it's intended to do. That's, to me, that's an abuse of the system. And that, the numbers bear it out too, just in the sheer number and the growth, exponential boom of applications by companies to bring these workers in. So both on the security side, I'd be very suspicious from countries that are hostile to us. For example, China, bringing in skilled workers, because, I'll tell you, I know this firsthand. The most innocuous people are all required to report back to Beijing. They have handlers in the U.S. It's something I think as Americans can't even wrap our minds around or realize just how much we are being violated. So this is what we've been trying to explain to people, because certainly in Michigan, we've seen this factory that's coming here. And initially the story was, well, this is how bizarre this was. Initially, the story was they were bringing this factory over. It would be run by Chinese nationals with a few Americans. And then the workers would actually live in the local dorms, and they would be Chinese nationals that they would bring over as well. Well, once that actually went national and people started to really hear, okay, wait, this is the news. We're not actually, the workers will be Michigan people. The workers will be Americans. We'll have a few Chinese nationals. But again, you have that, to me, is a very big problem when you have people who are connected. I mean, there's nobody that's buying a company that is a Chinese
company owner that is not connected to the CCP. They're all reporting back. They're all pledging their allegiance to Xi, and they're all giving information back. So that's an area where I think that we all have to be careful, whether it is a corporation or whether it's a corporation that is being built by the Chinese. But we also do see that these corporations are bringing people over to save money. They're making record profits, saving money. And let me go back to, you talk about this being a program that was helpful for your mom in the 70s, but that was also a time when it wasn't the natural progression to go from high school straight to college, that every American wasn't necessarily getting a degree. Now it really is a situation where most people are getting degrees, and most people are getting degrees in tech or science or something like that. There's plenty of Americans that are, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't exist. I'm just saying that there's more opportunity to hire Americans that have those degrees, and they're getting passed up because they can buy someone else for a lot less money.
Well, right. And so there's three different things that you went over there. They're all excellent points, sort of working backwards. Look at Apple, right? Apple, I think, is one of the abusers of the program, and they have the means. They're sitting on billions of dollars in cash. They could afford to pay more for these STEM jobs. They could. And what'll happen is, and you're exactly right. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, if these jobs did pay more, and I know a lot of high intellect people, brain power people that I certainly grew up with, how come more of them didn't go into STEM? And the reason that they went into finance and they went into law is because, there's more money there. And so, but I mean, Apple and Google and Meta and all these companies are hugely profitable companies. Why are they not paying more? And the answer is because they can get away with paying less. And that's not okay. And to that end, I think that the more, I don't want to say nativist, but that part of the MAGA movement has a point. They have a valid point. Why are we in these communities? So now going kind of back to what you were saying earlier about that factory that you were describing, where they're going to just import workers and become a Chinese colony on U.S. soil.
Yes, exactly.
Now, what I would want to know is how many people in that town are on welfare or on some sort of public support who cannot get work. And we would be importing foreign labor into that town and at the same time subsidizing Americans sitting at home. And to me, we can't be a competitive economy. You don't talk to me about competitiveness, right? You see, we have to be a competitive economy. We got to keep pumping, cheap labor into the country. We're not going to be competitive. How can we be competitive if we're going to be literally subsidizing people sitting on their rumpus doing nothing, and at the same time, just opening our doors to frankly, to powers that are hostile to us? And then finally, you're absolutely right. I'm not going to belabor the point about the spying and the espionage, but I used to live in Irvine, California, and it's a lot of Chinese people there, very wealthy people who own factories, and we had neighbors. And I'll never forget, I was asking a group of Chinese neighbors at a little get together about something that was going on in China, and nobody wanted to say a thing. And about a year later, I was with one of the families, and the guy goes, "Oh, I couldn't tell you this when we were all there together." And I said, "Go on." I knew where it was headed because I'm familiar with this. And he goes, "Oh, they all report to their handlers, and I can't lose my factory, so I can't speak openly."
Wow.
In the U.S., this is in the United States of America, in California, in Irvine. I mean, I experienced it firsthand. So you are 1,000% correct.
Well, you mentioned Apple, and I will just say that I think there's a few issues there that I really believe the Trump administration should look into, because you have iPhone City in China. iPhone City is essentially slave labor. We should not be allowing an American corporation to use slave labor. And then you have them bringing people in and they're paying low wages here. And the whole thing, it reeks. It's actually it makes me very uncomfortable. And I admit, you get to a point where you're like, oh, well, everybody has an Apple phone. Everybody has an Apple Watch, But when you really look at the way they treat people, it's concerning.
Well, it is. And, some of it is, once removed via like companies like Foxconn, right? But but you're absolutely correct, and I love it because at least we conservatives are open and acknowledge this problem, and you've got the virtue signaling left that talks about human trafficking and slave labor and livable wages and everything, and then they perfectly are fine buying everything from China. So this is where I think Trump's tariffs are actually the right weapon to use against this, and you'll hear a lot of very smart people arguing against it, and I think, look, I mean, this my phone I'm looking at an iPhone right here, and I love my iPhone. I'm not railing, but it's $1,400 now for an iPhone.
Right, yes.
And what did it cost to produce?
Right. Yeah.
And where is that? And is that right that American workers aren't producing this? And who's to say that, that we couldn't produce it domestically somewhere in that general range of price, and still be able to produce a profit for Apple. So it's just there is an ethical component to this, and bringing manufacturing back to this country isn't just something that's important for our economy. It's important for our national security too.
Absolutely, because every iPhone that comes in from China, I mean, give me a break. We're concerned about Huawei. We're concerned about any type of tech that's coming in. Every single one of us is carrying something with us everywhere we go that comes in and could potentially have some tracking device from China. I mean, we know we're being tracked all the time, like the idea that we think that we're safe by getting rid of one app. You're using a device that came from there, and they control everything that is manufactured. Whether you are an American company or not, the Chinese have total control. And that's why you see this push for America first. But it's not just building it in America. I mean, it would be one thing to be in an allied country. It's a whole different situation to be in an adversarial country. Like if you're building products with the enemy, that is extremely dangerous for national security. But it's almost as if we haven't thought about any of this. And when we get back to the H-1B visas, I think there's also some confusion from the average American as to what that is, because I hear people say all the time, well, how would our farms run? How would our factories run if we weren't bringing these people in to fill these jobs? And I always say, no. These are not the people that are filling those jobs, because these are people that have to have a degree. When we tried to get workers in, because there's so few steel foundries left in the United States, there is truly a lost skill. So my dad he worked with a factory actually most recently out of Indiana, and he was trying to bring workers in from Eastern Europe because there was nobody that understood steel casting manufacturing anymore. He wanted to bring in 13 guys that could teach our guys on the floor how to pour and finish steel castings. Can't do it because maybe it's a skill, but you don't need a degree for it. So they don't fall into this category. So where Americans oftentimes think you're bringing in all these workers and they're filling the jobs that we can't get Americans to fill. Not true.
Well, yeah, there's like the 20 plus different categories of different visa levels that correspond to different programs by which people can be brought into the country, and they are, so when we talk about the H-1B visa, I think people generally just call all of these visas one thing. You're absolutely right. The H-1B visa is a skilled person with a college degree or a college degree of university training of some kind, and there's a minimum income level or a salary, excuse me. But what I think is, I come back to this. It isn't so much about the skill, and the reason I know that, meaning the way the program is being used, right, in practice. The reason I keep coming back to this is, why are they all from India? Why are they not from Germany or from Sweden or from, France? The STEM learning, frankly, I know we're America's woeful in this, in our, kind of K through 12. University is a little bit better, but K through 12 is abominable. But in Europe, it's better. And English is better. And a lot of things are better. But the reason that we have so many people come from India is because we can get them for less. It is all about salary shopping. That's the infuriating part of it. So it's, to me, it's not, I think it's not a racist thing to say, hey, wait a minute. Why are we taking so many people from India? The real reason, in my view, is these companies recognize that they're taking this. They've got some, certainly there's a lot of people there who fit the bill, quote unquote, but they can pick them up for just over that minimum threshold. They can get them for $65, $70, $80,000. And people in Western Europe wouldn't take that job for under 200, $150. So it's just dollars and cents.
I mean, so what is the solution to that? Because I can see how a businessman like a Vivek Ramaswamy would go, well, this is a good deal because your products are going to be lower if they come, which it doesn't ever seem like that's the case. Somehow the CEO always has a private jet and a yacht. It's like these companies that bring these folks in, they're paying them less. That's not the American way. And it seems very strange to hear people promoting the idea of bringing in someone in from another country and paying them less. It seems very wrong. It seems very un-American to do that.
Well, I want to be very clear. I'm a proud capitalist. I begrudge no one their yacht or their plane or their success, their big house, and I hope billionaires stay billionaires. I want people to get rich in this country. I really do. Now, I also want us, in order to live in the best country in the world, which we do, and to keep it this way, we must build up our middle class, our upper middle class, and we have to, for the sake of the country, as we mentioned earlier, really bring manufacturing back into the U.S. Now, I think where I'm at philosophically on this is, and if you followed, it was right after Christmas, right? So I'm sort of in my Christmas stupor, and I'm following this fight between Vivek, who I love. Mm-hmm. I love Vivek, and Elon Musk, and other people chiming in. And, and Vivek's perspective was very different from some other people that were fighting him. And I think where that fight ended is exactly where I've been all along. I think we absolutely should go around the world and look to poach the top 1%. I believe in that. I think it should be harder to take people from China. I think people should be screened, by the security services, by, the IC community. Yeah, I really think there has to be some screenings. But
there is something, right? Because you have to apply for the visa. It's not as though they can just hand them out.
I have no faith right now in our intelligence communities whatsoever. I think that's all pro forma. And I also think that they're all in bed with China. So I'm very skeptical of that having any real meaning. But there really should be a serious vetting of those people. But look, should we be taking the top 1%, or 0.1% from Germany, from Great Britain? I mean, the countries are going in the toilet right now. Absolutely. Yes, 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 all day long. So the program should be far more narrowly tailored, and the minimum salary should go way up. That's the solution, because the 65K, or I think it's 65K, is nothing. You're talking about college, again, because of the requirements in there. You're talking about people with a specific skill, college graduates, et cetera, and you're setting the minimum salary at 65. I mean, of course it's going to get abused. Of course employers are going to bring, are going to use that to undercut our own college graduates.
So is that's that a minimum? Is that salary set by? That's a visa, like the visa, the minimum salary to bring someone in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's there's a floor, right? So I've seen some people saying, well, look at this, they're bringing in bringing people for $35K a year. Now there's a minimum floor there, and one thing that is a little bit deceptive is that's the salaries. The bonuses aren't listed, so the bonus structure could be higher. But my point is, I know people in tech, people in tech, what those jobs pay,
right?
Domestically, those are well-paid people, rightly so. And so my sense of it is absolutely, we're bringing in people who are delighted to come to the U.S. and work for $65K a year, and they live 4 or 5 of them in a single apartment. And that's, no, I don't think that's right to anybody involved.
Right. Because obviously, if you live here, you deserve to have the same life as any other person who lives here. I mean, really, you shouldn't say this person is used to lower pay in their country. Well, you live in this, you have to live in this country to work in this country.
Yeah, well, and absolutely, and look again, the overarching kind of perspective on this, the common sense conservative approach is we want companies to be successful, but every single country around the world uses tariffs to protect their domestic industry.
Hmm.
Why are we the only idiots around? Like you go to, I don't know if you've ever been to South Korea. You go to South Korea, a huge manufacturing country. And and then you find out, oh, you see one Mercedes, and well, why? Oh, well, because it costs 250 grand, Sam. That's why. You can buy a Hyundai for whatever a Hyundai costs, but if you want to buy a Mercedes, or gosh forbid a Jeep or something from America, Germany, wherever, I mean, it's 100%, 150% tariff, and they're protecting their industry with it.
Oh
And
my gosh, but it's not a lie, because you look at the countries that haven't. I mean, look at Germany. They are shutting down Volkswagen factories because the Chinese vehicles have come in and taken over, and they didn't set that standard. They didn't protect their own industry and their own vehicles. So now they're losing their own auto manufacturing facilities because they've had a foreign country come in and take over their market share. And that's what I think, coming from Michigan, that's been the fear from Michiganders this whole time, is like, we put the world on wheels. We make American cars. If we don't have tariffs, and there is the ability if we don't have somebody holding China at bay, they do well with their vehicles. They make electric cars. They know how to do it. They've been able to take over the market. They have the materials. That's their bread and butter. We don't want them coming in and taking over our gas powered vehicle lines and obsoleting what we do. That's very dangerous. And that's why we have to have somebody that's going to protect that in Washington.
Right. Well, and two things on that, right? And again, as far as the EV market, it never works when the government tells companies what to produce. Guess who decides what companies produce? We, the consumers. We, with our wallets, decide what gets produced. So that's one thing. The other part of that is, of course, it's crazy to me because, you mentioned Volkswagen and it's happening there, in Michigan. Our industries will get gutted. There's always someone who will be able to produce something for cheaper, who has a poorer population. And the cautionary tale here is, and I'm maybe a little bit of a skeptic when it comes to the left, and when it comes to the politicians out there who are selling our countries out, both the U.S., Germany, around the world, the West collectively, doing this, is I just think that they want people to be poor. If everybody's out of work and everybody's not, if people aren't gainfully employed, if people don't have the pride of bringing home a good living to their family, they're broken. And if they're broken, they vote Democrat, they vote socialist, they vote communist, and they maintain and empower the very people that created this problem. So we have a once in a generation opportunity in 10 days, when Trump comes into office, to fix this. I hope we do, because really the future of our country depends on it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. What's your take on what's happening with our universities giving space to foreign students? And I will tell you that we've had some parents. I've talked to parents actually across the country. I have a daughter that's a sophomore, so I'm at that age where everybody's starting to look at universities and talking to the parents who just sent their kids. And it's been really tough to get kids into our top 20 universities. There just don't seem to be the spaces. I mean, for multiple reasons, but one is foreign students pay higher tuition and they bring them in.
Yeah, so I've two competing interests in this to disclose. One, I have next year he'll be a senior white male who will be looking for a spot in a university somewhere in the U.S. So that's going to be tricky. Number two, I am on the board of a university in Orange County, California, Chapman University. And so, I have some insight into, the benefits of certainly on the financial side, and also I would say some cultural benefits of bringing in, foreign students. The foreign students, the reason that foreign students are popular on universities is that they pay a lot. And one of the challenges that's going to exist for universities is, particularly if Trump can carries through with some of his threats / promises about reforming the Department of Education, reforming FAFSA, student aid, federal funding for student loans, et cetera. These universities are going to have to fill budgetary holes. So this is going to be a delicate dance. Well, I absolutely believe, again, that if you are an American, if you are a resident, alien, if you are living in the United States, your kids should get priority, plain and simple. The way I understand that we use it at Chapman, and I'm not speaking for the schools, just my observation is that we, there's graduate positions and programs that are opened up to foreign students, and it never has impacted, students that are domestic looking to be admitted into the university. Just never has. But I hear the criticism, and I believe some schools out there are doing this. And I think that there's just going to be a lot of wake up for universities in general. It's a whole nother topic of where this is going. And I would even say this, I say this with, a kid who's kind of figuring out where he wants to go to school is, I don't even know what the draw of the top 20 schools are anymore after what I have seen.
Isn't that weird?
What I have seen, and by the way, with AI coming, Tudor, this is a whole nother, I love this. One of my favorite topics. I know we're short on time, but I look at, what AI is going to do to our kids, right? That are in that, soon young adulthood or soon to be young adulthood. Everything is going to change. So one of the things I've told my son, and I'm saying this as a college graduate and a graduate school graduate, is, hey, going to college just to go to college may not be the path.
Right.
If you can learn a trade and build a business around a trade, you may be far more successful in life than some people that are now deciding to go to college and end up in a career that will be obsolete in 10 years.
The funny thing is that may have always been the case, and we just weren't paying attention to that because, when you run for office, you talk to people all the time that are supporters. So you either have the supporters on the other side or your own supporters. And as I went around Michigan, and obviously I know that we are more of a manufacturing industrial state, but the wealthiest people who were giving to the Republican cause, many of them would tell me, if I were to start my business today, which was right out of high school in my garage, the regulations have changed so much. I couldn't do today what I did back then. And I never went to college to do it.
Yeah. Of course. Our government's just incessantly in the way. And again, I think it's part of a broader scheme that the government has. Again, they want to make it difficult to succeed. If you succeed, you become independent. If you become independent, you don't need them. And the Republican Party, for me, has always been, the party of independence, for independent people who want to succeed on their own and just want government to, in the words of Ronald Reagan, get the hell out of the way. So, again, I agree 100%. And I sense that there's an opportunity for a great American revival, starting with Michigan and other states where manufacturing once, reigned supreme. I really hope over the next 4 years and the next 8 after that, hopefully with JD Vance, that this country really finds its footing again. And it has to start with manufacturing, has to start with small business, has to start with some common sense approaches to these problems that we talked about.
I think so many people, I'll just end on this. I think so many parents feel this pressure of, my kid has to go to a really good college and my kid has to have a great degree. And the next step is absolutely going straight to college. And like I said, the people that I met, that was not their story. And their stories are so interesting. We had a woman on here who talked about entrepreneurs. She'd interviewed all of these successful entrepreneurs and what their childhood was like. And one of the folks even that we work with on a daily basis, his son didn't go to college and he started working out in the racing circuit and sort of looked at what was going on and like, oh, these are the throwaway parts that we need to buy all the time. Started reverse engineering some of those parts and saying, man, I can bring them in. I can do them at home on my 3D printer. And, that kind of entrepreneurial spirit is what built this country. I love that. And I'm like, for the parents, it's a little nerve wracking to be like, oh gosh, do you not have that piece of paper that you have to succeed? And yet they're like, the book that this woman wrote time and time again, it was parents saying, as much as I freaked out about it, I had to step back and say, I have to trust him or her to know what they love most and what will take them in that next direction. So it's an interesting time. I'm sure you're feeling the same thing with a child that age. Like, what do I do? How do I guide them?
No, absolutely. And they're scared, and I remember, as do you, right? You remember that time in your life where you didn't know what would happen. But, we as parents have to have faith in them. And they actually, I think our youth now are far more aware of what opportunities there are than I think I was at my son's age.
I always tell them, I don't know if I should give you any advice. I'll let you know once I've figured out what I'm going to do when I grow up.
I love it.
Well, Sam, it's been wonderful having you. Sam Mirejovsky, thank you so much for being on here.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tudor. A pleasure and great to meet you and be with you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening to us on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this podcast and others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com, subscribe right there, or the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us next time on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Have a blessed day.